Hi everybody, my name is Finlay. I'm an aerospace engineer and I'm part of Safe Landing. We're a global community of aviation workers. We care about the future of our industry and the future of our planet. So we're keen to talk to different people about the vision for what does the future of air travel look like. And I've got Brian here with me today. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, thanks, Finlay. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah.
So could you just introduce a bit about yourself and the organisation that you're from?
Sure. So I'm Brian Davidson, the head of energy and climate at Fathom Consulting. We're macroeconomists. We look at all issues related to the economy. And I look at a lot of our work on sustainability, on energy, and we've recently been doing a project on aviation and the economics of decarbonising aviation. Very happy to talk some more about that and get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, let's get into that. But just firstly, let's go back a little bit. So
Sure.
let's rewind 25 years. What were you up to then? I guess like you weren't really in, how did you get into sort of the sustainability sector? What's been your journey up until this point?
I grew up in South Africa. That's where I was 25 years ago. And I guess it's a combination of pursuing a dream, going on some slightly strange paths. I wanted to work in the football industry, and here I am talking about decarbonising aviation. To cut a long story short, I've been interested in studying things and telling people what I find, so doing research, and I was previously researching companies. I thought, you know what, it'd be nice to research countries. So that's how I became an economist. And I guess both for professional and personal reasons, looking at sustainability and issues related to climate change, they're really important. Would like to do something that is meaningful. I think what more meaningful thing can you do than prevent the destruction of the planet, the only one that we have. And of course there's actually commercial opportunities in this space. It's really important to do this work, so here I am.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges of our generation, isn't it? You know,
for sure.
Alongside
for sure.
maybe AI and a few other things,
Yeah.
we've got our challenges, but yeah, sustainability.
And the thing is, a lot of it's irreversible. The damage we do now can't be reversed, so I really think it's important to get the messages out there and do good, well-founded analysis, not based on ideology, but based on well-founded economics. So
Great.
That's what we try to do.
Yeah, so you ended up working at Fathom Consultancy. Tell us a bit about this project then you've been working on the past year.
Yeah, so we've done several projects in aviation, various different aspects related to how R&D in the aviation sector has wider economic benefits. We've done work for the ATI. And then as a result of some of that work, we've been working with a group called the European Climate Foundation, who I know you know, and they've asked us to look at the economics of decarbonising aviation from Europe's point of view. And in that, we look at the different ways to decarbonise aviation, the different options, the different types of SAF, as well as zero-emission or hydrogen-powered flight. Happy to talk about the findings and the results.
Yeah, and I suppose like looking at it from that economic perspective, obviously to an extent, like good use of our planet's natural resources. Like what's an efficient use of the resource should also ultimately probably be like the economic thing that wins, and obviously money's a big driver for airlines,
Sure.
for any company. So yeah, getting to the bottom of what's good value for money should help us also get to the bottom of efficiency, right?
For sure, and I mean one thing we would like to see as economists is the externalities from carbon emissions or other greenhouse gas emissions being paid for. If you properly account for those, then the cost of decarbonisation technologies all become a lot lower. But we live in a world where that is not particularly stringent at the moment. That might change. So we look at the different options of decarbonising and their costs relative to each other and their cost relative to kerosene. And we can look at these things under a range of different assumptions, depending on the price of oil, depending on what price of carbon you have, depending on what feedstock availability you have, how much electricity supply and demand you have, and how demand for how the demand from aviation for electricity, how the supply of electricity responds to that. All of these things will affect the relative price and attractiveness of these technologies. And what we find is that the waste-based SAFs can probably decarbonise up to about 15% of European aviation before costs start to spiral.
This is using sort of waste biomass, like farm waste, food waste, forestry
things
waste,
like
that kind of thing.
Exactly. And currently, for heifer, we import that uses used cooking oil. We import a lot of that used cooking oil. But realistically, other countries, China, are going to start using their own used cooking oil to make their own SAF. So the advantage with this is that the technology is, we could say, ready to go. It uses existing infrastructure, so it makes sense to use that now. But I think that one of the key problems in finding things we've found in our research is that by focusing too much on the short term at the expense of the long term, you'll look at solutions which can only decarbonize a bit of aviation. And then what happens when we do that? We're like, oh my gosh, the costs are going up too much, what are we going to do? So either that could destroy jobs, it could mean no more flying, it could mean very high costs, it could mean decarbonizing aviation doesn't happen at all. So I think looking at the long run options, as we've done, is a sensible thing to do. I think we should talk a little bit more about that. And so what we've seen as the realistic options are PTL, where you
Power
blend
to liquid.
Power to liquid, where you blend CO2 with hydrogen, green hydrogen, or powering planes using hydrogen itself. Both of those have their challenges. What our analysis shows is that provided there are some more technological breakthroughs with hydrogen, building out the infrastructure, there's a lot that needs to be done, but the costs of that method come down quite rapidly as people are likely to get better at building that infrastructure, learning by doing, economies of scale. And on that basis, it looks like the most feasible long-run solution.
Okay. And there's a bit in your report about the kind of knock-on benefits to other sectors of the economy. So, if what you're sort of saying is like fund innovation, R&D into these types of radical propulsion and aircraft, and in doing so we'll develop technology that might have actually co-benefits to automotive or to energy or chemicals industry, right? And in terms of skills, but also technology, is that just
100%. So the first reason I've just described is that on a cost basis, zero-emission flight or hydrogen-powered flight looks likely to become the most cost-attractive option in the long run. But also the thing that you mentioned is it actually requires a lot of R&D and really cutting-edge R&D. And what we've found in previous research we've done, there's a whole literature on this, is that doing cutting-edge R&D, the issue is that the companies or the people that do that R&D, they typically accrue only a small part of the benefit of doing that. But from society's point of view, there are positive spillovers as people who work for those companies go in and do other things. Those ideas, as you said, they can be used in other sectors of the economy or even other parts of the aviation industry. So doing that R&D is likely to have really big, wider economic benefits, which is the second reason in favor of this technology. One of the issues is if people are the ones that are doing it don't see all the benefits, they have less personal incentive to do it. So there's a case here to use public taxpayer money to incentivize that, either by funding it or giving tax breaks or supporting it somehow, also through regulations. And then our analysis shows that these benefits can be really powerful from society's point of view, that actually when they are taken into account, flying using hydrogen is likely to be cheaper than flying using kerosene.
Do you think just because you're into economics, and this is something we think about a lot in safe landing, is we are aviation workers and society in general. We're going to be living through and working through the next few decades, but often our leaders, both politically and from a business point of view, have much shorter time horizons. They have a quarterly share price. They have an annual general meeting. For politicians, there's an election in 2 years. Do you think that can be a bit of a difficulty when trying to make these arguments where you accrue the benefits over 5-10 years, and how would you, if you were talking to someone like that, how would you make the case?
That's definitely true, but it's not the whole story. So if you're talking to a policymaker, they have political cycles. So if you're saying use a lot of these funds to support R&D, the benefits will happen over 5, 10, 20 years. They're not going to be in office in 5, 10, 20 years, so they have less incentive. They won't see those benefits.
Yep.
That said, by using the money now, you will also create jobs now. You can also create jobs directly by employing the scientists and engineers. You need to do that, but you can also indirectly create jobs by giving the right signal to the market, to the private sector, that actually we recognize the potential of this technology, we're supporting that technology, and that will then incentivize private capital to actually flow into that sector. So one of the issues with hydrogen, it's not just the technology, it's having all of the infrastructure to fly the planes, all of the infrastructure to fuel the planes at the airports, make the hydrogen. But if we keep focusing on the short run, we'll never realize the long run potential. So there are both long run and short run benefits, and I think finding ways to align those I don't think it's actually that difficult in the case of hydrogen. And if you can say to industry, well, this is the possibility, you could reap those rewards, or if you don't do anything, others are going to realize that is the possibility and they will beat you to it. What's happening in Europe is we're losing out to the Chinese on our electric vehicle manufacturing, on building solar panels, batteries. They've had a long-term vision. We haven't. They're reaping the benefits. We're not. You could say the same thing about Elon Musk. I'm not sure what the viewers think about him, but whatever you think of him, he had that vision on EVs. A lot of people said, well, the infrastructure is not there, it's not going to be possible, but it was, and he's made a lot of money out of it. So if the private sector acts in the right way, supported in the right way by governments, the incentives can align for the optimal outcomes to prevail. Easier to say, easier said than done, but the possibility is there.
Okay, yeah, I think at the moment, politicians are looking for how can we make aviation work for the economy, and it is interesting to be given kind of alternative visions for how that can happen. I mean, we're real big fans of that kind of approach, whether it's hydrogen, battery electric, hybrid electric, alternative propulsion types, and making the country that you're in, whether it's UK, Europe, a testing ground for that. We're also kind of got that heritage of pioneering spirit. We do have that sort of lead in aviation, we being UK, Europe, North America, but there's also the possibility of losing that, right? And you want to kind of capitalize on the things that you've got, that's your strengths.
For sure.
So yeah, just talking about, I suppose, just to let you kind of expand on some of your conclusions of the study then. If you look forward to 2050 and beyond, if you do have that government action and industry action, how do you see air transport changing? What do you think in your mind how do you visualize that, what air travel looks like in 25 years' time if we fast forward?
I mean, what our work shows is that the potential for hydrogen is there. It could be the dominant fuel source or technology for aviation in 25 years' time. That said, there are a series of things that need to happen, and I think it's unlikely for all of those to happen by 2050. So realistically, we will have some aviation decarbonized using hydrogen by then, but I think what would be really great is if that technology, and I think it will, once you get planes in the sky flying on hydrogen, that's really going to prove the concept, and I think we'll see things accelerate. So at the moment, industry is very much focused on SAF, and I think that hydrogen has taken a little bit of a back seat, and there's been some scaling back of the ambition on hydrogen for various reasons. But once we actually have some planes in the air, and I think that's coming in the next few years on some of the smaller aircraft, I think that will prove the concept. Policymakers can then start actually putting that into law, into mandates, and I think you might get a bit of a virtuous circle. But I'm also realistic, building all the infrastructure, building all the new planes, we're not going to fully decarbonize aviation with hydrogen by 2050. But I think if we are doing 20, 30, 40, 50% by then, that would be a really great outcome. Even if it was 20 or 30%, then I think the technology will have proved itself, and I would expect that by 2070, then most flights will be on hydrogen. It's going to be a massive undertaking. There will be some cost to the passengers, but you've got to ask yourself, well, what's the cost to the environment by doing nothing? And if we are committed to doing something, as everyone here today is saying we are, then this seems to be one of the better options.
And do you think, just in terms of how aviation would benefit other sectors, if we get that green hydrogen sort of supply in place, there's obviously other things we could use green hydrogen for, fertilizer, steel, other things. Do you think that we should be looking at that kind of cross-sector approach and how we can decarbonize the whole of the economy as quickly and as efficiently as possible?
I think there would be some argument to that. I think a lot of people would say no. The reason being that there are more efficient uses of hydrogen. That essentially it's more efficient to use electricity to decarbonize things where that's possible. But in aviation, batteries are very heavy, so there's limitations on what batteries can do under current technologies. So therefore hydrogen becomes a more suitable option. So I think other industries will need hydrogen. There's a question mark about exactly which ones, but steel's one that springs to mind, maybe fertilizers. So I think I think what we need at the moment is as much support for hydrogen as possible will be a good thing, but there's a question about the most efficient use of that hydrogen. I think aviation should be a priority, but anything we can do to get that industry going would be would be a good thing, at least in the short run.
Okay, so final question. Obviously we're a group for aviation workers, but just people watching this might be interested in sustainable aviation or just you work at a consultancy that focuses on sustainability. Have you got advice for anyone that wants to like get into the type of organization that you're in terms of what should they like focus on, what sort of things should they get involved with? If someone was going to apply to a company, what would you be looking out for?
I mean, what I think is a good skill set to have and important to do is think of things through first principles. Think what are the real issues here, what are the real issues facing society or a particular industry, and think through the solutions. There's a lot of buzzwords, there's a lot of acronyms flying around, or there's political winds can shift very quickly. I think looking through those into really what matters as having a slightly more longer term perspective would be a good thing. Obviously political cycles and the attitudes towards decarbonising shift quite a lot, but if we constantly as an industry or as a professional respond to every political cycle, we're never going to actually go in a direction we want to. So I think looking in the long term, that's important to do. The issue of climate change is not going away anytime soon. It's going to get worse. So there's going to be many jobs to whether you believe in decarbonising or not. There's going to be jobs where you need to consider the effects of a warming environment, and we need to consider the economic effects of different solutions or alternatives. So I think this industry is here to stay. There'll be lots of opportunities. I'd encourage people to keep an eye out, apply for a job at Fathom Consulting if you like, or Safe Landing. But hopefully that's somewhat useful advice, and probably better than the sort I would have given 25 years ago when I was a boy in South Africa.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for talking to me.
Sure.
Yeah, looking forward to the report coming out. Look out for it when it comes out. When is
12th of June? It's going to be released. If you'd like to know more about it, you can find us online, Fathom Consulting. Go onto our website, skip through a few pages. You'll find details about our study on there. It's decarbonising European aviation. So yeah, keep an eye out.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
and
Finlay.
best of luck with your future work as well.
Thanks. And you too.
Cheers.
Cheers.